Feiyutech have just brought out their new Pocket 3 camera, which has a really innovative design, and today I'm going to check it out. At first glance, the Pocket 3 looks like pretty much every other standard handheld camera gimbal, although it's slightly unusual looking. But the really clever bit is that it comes in two parts. You've got what I'm going to call the head unit and the handle, and these can either be used together or separately. So let's take a quick look at the camera head unit. As you can see, it's got a fairly standard 3-axis motorized gimbal, and this is going to keep your horizons beautifully level, your verticals perfectly vertical, and give you some nice smooth shots. The camera itself can shoot up to 4K in 60 frames a second, and it has a 16mm equivalent lens, so that's going to give you some beautifully wide angle shots. The camera can also shoot in several modes, so obviously there's going to be video, there's a photo mode, a slow-mo mode, and a time-lapse mode. On the camera head itself, there's also a very basic little LCD screen, and this just shows you the status of the camera. You can't actually view what the camera is shooting with this screen. There are also 3 buttons on the camera head. You've got the on-off power button, you've got the mode button, and you've got the shutter button, and these again just control the very basic operations of the camera head. The head itself is magnetic, so you can stick it on any ferrous surface, and it's also got a little adapter, and when you slide it into the adapter it gives you a little 1/4-20 mount, so then you can mount it on things like tripods and other photo accessories. Now the handle is essentially the remote control for the head unit, so it's got all of the camera controls on there, plus a little LCD screen where you can see what the camera is shooting. Now on the handle itself, you've got the mode button, you've got the shutter button, and you've also got like a joystick which controls the pitch and the tilt of the camera head, so that's pretty useful. You've also got a zoom rocker. Now, yeah, okay, you can zoom in with this camera, but I wouldn't recommend going any further than a 2x zoom. It can go up to a 4x zoom, but all this is doing is a digital zoom. It's not an optical zoom. And once you go past about a 2x zoom, the image starts to look a bit grainy and a little bit ropey, and yeah, you might as well do that in post anyway, because, well, it's not doing anything different. The thing to note here is that the handle is effectively an optional extra. You don't necessarily need to buy them together, and you certainly don't need the handle to operate the camera head. If you just want to buy the camera head, then you can control it using the free Feiyutech app running on your smartphone. The runtime on the camera head is not that great, if I'm to be honest. You can get up to 45 minutes of shooting if you're filming in 4K, and up to an hour if you're shooting in HD. The good thing is though, it doesn't take that long to charge the camera head. You can plug it in using a fairly standard USB-C lead, and it will be fully charged in about an hour and a half. One of the slightly clever things here is that when you've got the head unit connected to the handle will charge the head unit, and that will obviously give you a little bit of extra shooting time. But the warning here is don't leave them connected and unused for any length of time, because if you leave it connected and laying around for about a week or so, both batteries will be completely drained. You'll go to pick the camera up to use it, and you'll find that both batteries are completely dead.
Ah, pancakes.
Now, one of the first things that I want to know about any camera is image quality. And I have to say that the image coming out of the Feiyutech Pocket 3 is actually really very good. Now, you have the option of 2 color profiles. You have a fairly standard color profile, and you can use this straight out of the camera, or you can use what they call the Fei log profile, and this is a fairly flat color profile, that will need grading later, but if you take the time to do that, it looks really, really good. Now, low light performance, well, if you're out and about shooting at night, sadly the low light performance isn't going to be that great, but then it's an action camera, and I've yet to meet an action camera that does have low light performance. Normally though, I expect you'll be out and about using this camera during the hours of daylight, and obviously the better and the brighter the day, the better the results you're going to get. But even if you're here shooting in the UK on a fairly dull, overcast day, you're going to get a fairly good looking image. A couple of issues that I've got with the camera head is that firstly, the rotation on the camera isn't a full 360 degrees, so effectively you're kind of left with a bit of a blind spot. And secondly, when you try and recenter the camera by pressing the mode button twice, it doesn't actually return it to the center. It returns it to this kind of weird position where the camera's looking up and to the left slightly, and then you have to use the joystick to return it to the real central position. And my thinking is, what's the point of even having a return to center function if it doesn't actually return it to the center? One of the things that I found a little bit curious about the camera head is, despite it being such a wide angle lens, I was unable to focus on objects that were too close, and they just kind of looked out of focus, and not in a good way, not in that kind of shallow depth of field way. It just looked wrong. Another great feature of the Pocket 3 is the magnetic mount. You can stick it on any ferrous surface and it is going to stay there pretty much solidly. The magnet is so strong you can stick it on something like a car bonnet or a car roof. You can drive around and you can be pretty confident that it's not going to fall off. The downside though is that the mag mount seems to work a lot better when it's on a horizontal metal surface, so again like a car bonnet or a car roof or something, but you can kind of get away with mounting it vertically if you effectively point the camera in the up position. Now I've tried to stick the camera mount to the side of my car and get the camera to look sideways, but due to the limitation of the motorized gimbal, this is just not going to work, which is a real shame because I think they've missed a trick here.
Audio on the Pocket 3 is a story of two halves. What you're hearing now is the audio that's being recorded by the Pocket 3's own internal microphone, and if you're filming indoors doing a piece to camera, then okay, it's kind of passable, but it does sound a little bit tinny and the levels are a little bit low. But what about if you want to record outside, particularly when it's a little bit windy? Well, isn't that great in my opinion? Now the wind is blowing just a little bit today, so as you can imagine, when the wind is really strong, the audio is going to sound really bad. And unfortunately, the only way you're going to record good audio on the Pocket 3 outdoors when it is windy is to use some kind of external recording device, which kind of defeats the object of having an all-in-one camera.
In my humble opinion, I would say that I probably wouldn't recommend the Pocket 3 as a vlogging camera, and that's entirely down to the audio. Basically, it's not very good when it's windy and you can't connect an external microphone. However, I think the Pocket 3 really comes into its own when you use it as a B-roll camera, and that's because the image quality is absolutely fantastic. The gimbal works brilliantly and you're going to have some beautifully smooth shots, and its small form factor means that you can put it in some pretty unusual places to get some really interesting shots that are going to take your videos to the next level. If you'd like some more information about the Pocket 3, then I'll leave a link to the Feiyutech website in the description below. But in the meantime, thank you for watching and I'll see you on the next one.